Welcome to Life Turns, the place where stories about family, love, betrayal, and unexpected twists come alive. Today's story is one you won't forget, because it's about being underestimated, being mocked, and then proving everyone wrong in the most jaw-dropping way possible. Still remember the way my stomach twisted as I walked into the grand ballroom where my sister's wedding was being held. The place was like a dream. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, tables were draped in ivory silk, and violins filled the air with soft music. My younger sister, Emma, looked like a princess in her white gown, her hand looped through Dad's as they made their way to the altar. Everyone's eyes followed her, glowing with pride. But when people saw me, I could already feel the whispers starting. I was 38 years old, single, and the black sheep of the family. At least, that's how my mom made me feel. She never missed a chance to remind me that my biological clock was ticking, that I wasn't getting younger, and that my younger sister had beaten me to the altar. Every family dinner, every holiday, every casual phone call, there was always some little jab wrapped in a laugh. "Maybe one day it'll be your turn," she'd say, half mocking, half sympathetic. So, as I sat there among the guests in my simple navy blue dress, I prepared myself for another night of being compared, dismissed, and maybe even pitted. But I didn't expect the moment that would unfold, the one that would change how everyone in that room saw me forever. The ceremony went smoothly. Emma and her fiancé exchanged vows, the crowd cheered, and Mom cried like her life had just been fulfilled. Afterward, during the reception, as the champagne flowed and the music grew louder, Mom leaned over to a group of relatives, loud enough for me to hear, and said, "Well, at least one of my daughters made it. 38 and still single?" I was beginning to lose hope. Her words hit me like a slap across the face. The relatives laughed awkwardly, and I could feel my cheeks burning. I wanted to shrink, to disappear into the floor. But something inside me stirred. It wasn't just embarrassment, it was anger. Anger at being belittled, dismissed, and judged like my worth was tied only to a ring on my finger. I held my breath, biting back tears, when suddenly, a sound filled the room that no one expected. The deep, thunderous whir of blades cutting through the sky. Guests turned their heads toward the massive windows, pointing in shock as a helicopter descended onto the hotel's helipad. The music stopped, conversations froze, and the crowd hurried to the balcony to see what was happening. And then, the doors of the ballroom swung open. A man in a perfectly tailored suit walked in, exuding confidence, his presence commanding every gaze in the room. My heart skipped a beat as his eyes found mine and softened into a smile. It was Daniel. My husband. But not just any husband. Daniel was a billionaire, worth over $5 billion, the CEO of a global tech empire, and the most humble yet powerful man I had ever known. We had kept our marriage private for years, away from prying eyes and greedy relatives, living quietly and happily without flaunting wealth or titles. But tonight, fate had decided to reveal everything. As he walked toward me, the room was dead silent, every eye wide with disbelief. My mom's smirk faded, her champagne glass trembling in her hand. And when Daniel wrapped his arm around me, kissed my cheek, and said, "Sorry I'm late, love." The helicopter had a delay, jaws practically hit the floor. The room erupted into murmurs as Daniel took his place beside me. Some people blinked like they were seeing a ghost, others leaned over to whisper furiously, and a few even gasped out loud. I couldn't help but notice how Emma's new husband nearly choked on his drink when he realized who Daniel was. My mom froze in her chair, her face pale. The confident smirk she had worn earlier disappeared, replaced by wide eyes and parted lips. She stammered, "What is this? Who is he?" Daniel extended his hand politely, his voice calm yet commanding. "I'm Daniel Carter, her husband." His words sliced through the air, and I could almost hear the collective gasp ripple across the ballroom. My mom's jaw nearly hit the table. Husband? Her daughter, the one she mocked for being single at 38, wasn't just married, but married to a man who had just landed in a helicopter? Relatives who had laughed earlier suddenly leaned in with fake smiles, congratulating me, their tones sugary and insincere. "Oh, you never told us. Wow, how lucky you are. Such a surprise." Their voices dripped with shock, envy, and curiosity. But Daniel wasn't done. He placed his hand gently on my shoulder and said, "I couldn't let her sit here and feel small. Not when she's the most incredible woman I've ever known." My heart swelled at his words. I glanced at Mom, whose eyes darted nervously, her embarrassment written across her face like a headline. For once, she had no comeback. Emma, still in her gown, walked over, her expression torn between awe and jealousy. You're married?" she asked softly. I nodded. "Yes, for 3 years now." The shock on her face was unmistakable. She glanced at Mom, then at Daniel, as if trying to process it all. The band awkwardly resumed playing, trying to salvage the mood, but the night had shifted. Every single guest was now focused on us. Daniel excused himself briefly, stepping outside to take a call, and that's when Mom pounced. "Why didn't you tell me?" she hissed, her voice sharp, her eyes flashing with a mix of rage and humiliation. "Do you have any idea how stupid I look right now? I've been telling people you're single, that you'll probably end up alone, and now this?" Her words cut, but they didn't hurt like before. For once, I felt stronger. I took a deep breath and replied, "Do you hear yourself, Mom? All these years, you've mocked me, belittled me, and compared me. And tonight, you've finally realized that your opinion doesn't define me. You should be proud, but all you care about is your image." She flinched at my words, her lips tightening into a thin line. For the first time in my life, I didn't back down. I held my ground. Then Daniel returned, placing a protective hand on my back, sensing the tension. "Is everything all right?" he asked, his eyes narrowing slightly as he glanced at Mom. She forced a smile, but her discomfort was obvious. "Oh, just a little mother-daughter talk," she muttered. Daniel didn't push, but I knew he could read between the lines. He gave me a reassuring squeeze and whispered, "You don't have to let anyone dim your light, ever." His words wrapped around me like a shield. As the evening continued, the whispers turned into admiration. Some guests approached Daniel eager to shake his hand, to be associated with his success. But what made me proud wasn't his money or fame, it was the way he treated me, with respect, love, and dignity. At one point, he even raised his glass during a toast. "To my beautiful wife," he announced. "She is the reason I push harder every day, the reason I strive to build more. Success means nothing without someone who inspires you. And she has been my inspiration." His words brought tears to my eyes. The crowd clapped, some genuinely, others because they didn't want to be left out. Mom sat stiff, her face unreadable, but I could see the storm raging behind her eyes. She wasn't used to being overshadowed, and tonight, she was. Emma tried to salvage the spotlight, dancing with her husband and calling for attention, but the whispers about the helicopter, the billionaire, and me kept circling the room. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't the forgotten daughter or the failure. I was someone worth noticing, and not because of Daniel's wealth, but because I had finally embraced my own worth. When the night ended, Daniel and I walked out hand in hand. The helicopter waited for us on the rooftop, its blades slowly spinning. Guests crowded the balcony again, watching as we climbed aboard. My mom stood at the edge, her eyes glistening, though whether with anger or regret, I couldn't tell. As the helicopter lifted into the night sky, I looked down at the shrinking figures below. My heart raced, but not from fear, from freedom. For once, I wasn't defined by anyone else's timeline, expectations, or comparisons. I was living my own story, and it was powerful. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. My mom wasn't someone who let things go easily. And sure enough, what happened after that night turned our family dynamics upside down in ways I could never have imagined. The morning after Emma's wedding, my phone buzzed with messages. Some were from relatives pretending they always supported me, sending fake congratulations. Others were from friends who had heard about the helicopter entrance and wanted to know if the rumors were true. I laughed at some, ignored most, and held Daniel's hand as we ate breakfast overlooking the city skyline. But one message caught my attention. It was from Mom. Part of me wanted to ignore her. After everything she had said and done, why should I run to her? But a stronger part of me, the daughter who still wanted her mother's love, who still wanted some kind of closure, decided to go. Daniel, ever supportive, offered to come with me, but I told him I needed to face her alone. When I arrived, the house felt colder than usual, like the walls themselves were judging me. Mom was sitting in the living room, her posture stiff, her face unreadable. "So," she began, her tone dripping with accusation, "you've been hiding a billionaire husband for years. Do you realize how selfish that is? How embarrassing it made me look." Her words stung, not because of their truth but because of their emptiness. "Selfish?" I repeated, my voice trembling with both hurt and anger. "Mom, do you even hear yourself? You've spent years mocking me, tearing me down, telling everyone I was a failure. And now that you know I'm married, you're not happy for me, you're angry because of how it makes you look." She shifted uncomfortably, her eyes flashing. "I just don't understand why you didn't share it. Family should know." I shook my head. "No, family should support. Family should love unconditionally, not compare, not ridicule, not use my life as gossip for others. I didn't tell you because I was tired of being your punchline. I wanted a marriage that was ours, sacred and free of your judgment." Her lips pressed into a thin line. For once, she had no comeback. The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Finally, she whispered, "I just wanted the best for you." I almost laughed at the irony. "No, Mom. You wanted the best for yourself. You wanted children who fit your picture-perfect image, and when I didn't, you turned me into your shame. But here's the truth, you can't measure my worth by my age, my relationship status, or my success. And you certainly don't get to mock me anymore." Her eyes welled up, though whether from guilt or pride, I couldn't tell. I didn't know," she muttered softly. "I know," I said, standing tall. "But now you do. And it's up to you what you do with that." With that, I turned to leave. Later that evening, Daniel wrapped me in his arms and whispered, "I'm proud of you. You didn't need me to stand up for you, you did it yourself." His words filled me with warmth. Because he was right. For so long, I had let my mother's voice define me, but not anymore. Weeks passed, and the story of Emma's wedding became legendary in our family. People still talked about the helicopter, the billionaire, and the moment my mom's mockery backfired in front of everyone. Some said it was karma, others said it was fate. But to me, it was a lesson, a life lesson I would never forget. Emma eventually called me. At first, her voice was awkward, but then she admitted, "I'm sorry. I always went along with Mom's comparisons, and I never realized how much it hurt you. Seeing you stand there with Daniel, it made me realize I should have been your ally, not your rival." Her words brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you," I whispered. "That means more than you know." Our bond slowly began to mend. We laughed together again, shared stories again, and for the first time in years, I felt like I had my sister back. Mom, on the other hand, remained distant, but I noticed small changes. The mocking stopped. The jabs disappeared. Maybe shame had humbled her, or maybe, deep down, she had finally learned something too. One evening, months later, Daniel surprised me. He arranged for us to land the helicopter not at some skyscraper rooftop, but in the backyard of my childhood home. My heart pounded as I stepped out, the blades kicking up wind. Mom stood at the porch, clutching a shawl around her shoulders, her face soft and uncertain. I walked toward her, unsure of what to say. But before I could speak, she whispered, "I'm proud of you." The words I had waited decades to hear finally spilled from her lips. And in that moment, I realized this story wasn't just about revenge, or showing off, or proving her wrong. It was about reclaiming my voice, my worth, my dignity. It was about showing that no matter how much people mock you, belittle you, or count you out, your story isn't over until you decide it is. That night, as Daniel and I flew back under the stars, I looked out at the city lights below and smiled. Life had turned, in the most unexpected way, and I was finally free.